Okay, here we are. Hello everybody, if you're new to the channel. Thanks for coming by the video. I tend to talk about a lot of animation, video games on occasion, other media criticism, some more theoretical stuff. This was a very obvious topic of discussion. For a good while now, it's the Cuphead Show. On Netflix, it's finally out. We've known about this for what, at least 2 years at this point? We got that really early clip of Wayne Brady as King Dice, like doing a song. And since then, it's been almost nothing, basically no news until we finally got the full trailer, a month ago, a little while ago, start of the year. Today, time of recording, February 18th, it is officially released, at least here in the US. Yeah, it's just there on Netflix. 12 episodes total, and it was kind of strange. The episode lengths vary a little bit. I think they're generally around 11-12 minutes long, even though sometimes it'll list like, oh, it's like a 15-minute long thing. I think a bunch of that is just credits, which they skip automatically if you're watching on Netflix by default. So I don't know. It is quite short. 12 episodes. It's roughly, a little bit over 2 hours to watch the whole thing. It's time to talk about it. I'm going to be sharing my thoughts. And just a heads up, I guess I'll technically be spoiling a couple things, but to be honest, there's really not much to spoil, which we will be talking about soon enough when we get around to sort of the story aspects and the writing, basically. But up first, if you haven't seen my previous video about the Cuphead Show, where I was just saying, sort of my initial thoughts based on the trailer, I was not super excited about it. In particular, I thought that the visuals in the trailer, and the animation specifically, was just not on par with the visuals in the game itself. And as far as I'm concerned, and as far as a lot of other people are concerned, the visuals of Cuphead, the animation of Cuphead, is the primary appeal. Like the gameplay, whatever, the difficulty, run and gun stuff, it's there. Of course, people are interested in that as well, but the reason this game took off and became such a smash hit is because it was so easily marketable thanks to the visuals and thanks to that gorgeous animation based heavily on the style of golden age of animation here in the US, around 30s, 40s, basically. And I can still say with confidence that the animation in the show, no, it's not on par with the animation in the game, although I do understand that. I have sympathy for the team. I'm not saying that the animation team behind the show wouldn't be capable of producing visuals like that. I just think it would have taken so much time and so much money to produce that level of quality and detail. It probably just wasn't viable here. And so they've gone with slightly different art direction. The backgrounds are probably the closest thing to the visuals of the original game. The backgrounds look lovely, and to transition right into the animation and overall visuals of this show, I am so much more impressed than I expected to be. This is some of the most enjoyable animation I've seen in a streaming exclusive show probably for years. It's really lovely, and it's clear that they did indeed put a ton of work into character animation, into visual gags, which is crucial to capturing the feel of those, sort of classic 30s and 40s cartoons. It is there. Certainly the spirit of that animation style is here, although at times it does feel more heavily inspired by early 2000s cartooning. It is a mix. It does ultimately feel very modern, even just character designs and the way that they're colored and everything. It does ultimately feel like a modern show, although we have to talk about the scratches and the film grain. So I did a stream where I tried to analyze the trailers and the clips we'd had so far, and I did a whole big thing where I pointed out that I could see cycling scratches for the scratch effect here. It's supposed to look like, a beat up old film print, and those end up with scratches on them. And I realized that there were certain scratches you could just see that were identical. So they're just looping this scratch effect, and that was a little strange to me. I also don't think that the scratch effect adds anything positive to the experience of watching this show. And I would say that it's actually actively distracting quite a bit more often than I was hoping for. And something I did not see in the trailers, and I still struggle to see it in the trailers and clips now on YouTube, is film grain. I could not see any film grain in the original trailer. Maybe it comes down to YouTube compression or something like that, and as a result, I might have difficulty showing you actual footage from the Netflix show. Like that film grain might not quite show up on YouTube. So I guess for the moment, just trust me. If you compare the trailer footage that you're seeing here in my video with the actual show that you'll watch on Netflix, the film grain is there. And I'm actually okay with the film grain. It's really not invasive. It doesn't distract like the scratch effect does. And it's okay. I mean, it serves its purpose, whatever. You can really see it if you look at empty space in a character design. Like there's a lot of flat color. So if you just look very closely at a character's head or something, you will see the film grain. You can see it in the background too. I get it. And those elements were present in the game. I think they were better executed in the game, but here, scratch, distracting, film grain, it's fine. It's fine, whatever. I don't really mind it. But as I said, the animation is the draw on the visual side of things. It is just... it's quite lovely. They do some really wonderful things. I do think it's a great show to look at most of the time. They also use what seem to be physical miniatures at different times. They'll have like scrolling miniatures or miniature backgrounds and then put their the 2D animation on top of that. I thought that looked pretty neat. What else? Okay, so that's the visual stuff. Honestly, don't have too much else to say there. Moving on to audience. So this is rated TV Y7. I would say that just in terms of content in general, this is a kid's show. This is a show for little kids. The way that it's written, the way that the stories are structured, the length of the episodes, just the way that characters behave most of the time, it is very clearly aiming for a younger audience. And that was a big question I had leading up to the show's release, was like, who is this for? Because the game itself has an audience that spans a lot of different age ranges. Plenty of adults are into it, and plenty of young kids are into the game too. So here they have clearly aimed for a younger audience. I'm sure plenty of us grown-ups will end up watching it and talking about it, obviously, but it does not feel like adult-friendly animation to me. It doesn't feel like something that works equally well for kids and adults. That's just a small note leading into the storytelling side of things, because this was a very big question of mine heading into the show's release, was what are they going to do? Is it going to be the same story as the game? Is it going to be them going up against all the different bosses? Because again, at least in my opinion, the visuals are the appeal of Cuphead. That's the core of the appeal, and then gameplay's kind of secondary. Within the visuals of the original game, the bosses are the stars of the show. You're barely even looking at your character because you're trying to pay attention to bullets and hazards and boss animations and all this stuff. That's just fine because the bosses have the most interesting animations, and they all have such individual personalities and characters, despite the fact that they never actually speak. They're just so beautifully animated. The movement is wonderful. You get an exact sense of what they're up to, what they're about. They have transformations, all this great stuff. And here, they've opted to make Cuphead and Mugman the focus of the show. Far and away from everything else, we do have our main antagonist in the devil. I do not care about Cuphead and Mugman. I don't care about them in the game, and I think I care about them even less here in the show. Part of that is the way that they're voice acted. Overall, like everyone in the cast, I don't have too many issues with the voice acting, but the voice acting choices, both the casting and the performances themselves for these two lead characters, I don't like them. I kind of hate the voice acting performances for Cuphead and Mugman. It's also strange because I guess they're supposed to be like little boys or like tweens or teenagers or something. It's clear that they're children. They make that very clear in the show, but they sound like adult men. And it's weird because I think it's even going to have a negative impact on how I see these characters in the game. I actually kind of like that they weren't voiced in the game. You know, you get dialogue for them, obviously, but like you just get who they are from their animation, from what they're doing. You know, they get in trouble, but they do what they can to get out of trouble and go up against really intimidating foes and all that stuff. And here, they're just kind of morons. Like, they're just dummies. I've never found that kind of character especially entertaining. Even in the old Looney Tunes stuff, Hanna-Barbera stuff, I don't care. I don't really enjoy sticking with those characters for this amount of time. They straight up annoyed me at times, and so often I was just wondering, like, okay, when do we get other people? Ms. Chalice, she was in the trailer, she's in the DLC for the game. When is she showing up? Or just any of the bosses. We saw a handful of the bosses from the game in the trailer. They're gonna come around, right? And sort of. There are basically a handful of passing references to the game. The three-headed dragon boss, I forget his name, sorry. Cameo for roughly 15 seconds. Probably less than that. And then that's it. No more. Featured in the trailer. No, not a big conflict. Cuphead and Mugman don't even have interaction with the dragon. That's just it. And then it's done. One of the gumball minions from the lady, is it Lady Von Bonbon boss fight? He's one of the guys that comes out and shoots gumballs at you. He's in it for a hot second. Ms. Chalice only shows up in the final episode of the show, in episode 12. And that's it. She's clearly an important character. She will clearly continue to be a character. She's going to be central to a lot of things, I guess. The devil, he's in a good number, because if there is any kind of arc or continuous storyline to this season, it's just that the devil, he's owed Cuphead's soul, so he's trying to get it, and he doesn't do a good job. But that's only 3-4 episodes where he even shows up. And then outside of that, it's just these one-off kind of dumb stories, many of which revolve around really basic premises and plots that we've seen many, many times, even just in SpongeBob. Okay, there's an episode where they get a baby. I don't know what the baby is supposed to be still. Like, I don't what this design is supposed to be. But as a result, Cuphead and Mugman kind of become the parents and argue like parents in a married couple. And it's like, okay, yeah, like the SpongeBob episode where they're like a married couple and they argue like a married couple. Okay. Or like there's an episode where they're like, oh, you're left home alone. Don't break Elder Kettle's one really prized possession. I was like, okay, yeah, the SpongeBob episode with Mr. Krabs' first dollar. And like, don't mess it up. Oh, but then they mess it up. It's like, okay. That's the same episode, isn't it, actually? So that's a SpongeBob heavy episode as far as I'm concerned. Oh, this is not just a SpongeBob thing. It's been in many other shows and movies and all kinds of stuff. But Elder Kettle misunderstands, right? There's a basic misunderstanding. He thinks the Cuphead and Mugman hate him or trying to get rid of him, and so he keeps, conveniently only getting the implication of all this bad stuff, when you know right off the bat, if you're not a child, you know right off the bat, oh, they're talking about something else, and he will only find out about that at the very end, and everything will get cleared up. So when you recognize a very, very familiar storyline from the outset, you just have to sit around and wait for it to wrap up, and nothing in the meantime is all that entertaining to me. I do enjoy the visuals, I do enjoy the animation, but there's nothing about the writing here that is interesting in any way, that's different in any way. And as I've already referenced, I don't think it's really, for me, I don't think it's a very successful adaptation of the game at all. Just the world itself and the look sort of feels like the game, not completely successfully, and that's it. They don't fight the big bad guys. They don't do much actiony stuff at all. There's a couple episodes where they go on some kind of adventure, and those are great, but otherwise it's just like really basic, stupid cartoon plots, which, to be honest, the plots, those were always my least favorite elements of the old, Fleischer cartoons, early Disney work, Hanna-Barbera, Looney Tunes stuff I mentioned already. I don't care, like, you're there for the characters, you're there for the wacky gags, like Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote. You know you're not there for the story. You know that he's not gonna catch the Roadrunner, but that's okay, because you want to see all the wacky stuff that happens along the way. I just got so bored watching this show. I have no desire to go back to it. Like I said, I don't think it's meant for me to begin with. I'm an adult man. I don't think they were making the show for me from the start, and that's fine. But like, I'm the one reviewing this. I'm the one talking about this show, and that is my honest feeling. More overwhelming than anything else I've mentioned so far is just this sense of like, it feels old in some very bad ways. Generally speaking, when I'm watching it, I don't really care. I don't feel invested in these stupid characters who are our leads for some reason, even though no one cares about them. A lot of stuff from the game is just absent. Okay, 11-minute episodes or thereabouts, so it's just some stupid storyline and then it wraps up and you're done in the most predictable way possible. And here's the thing. Okay, I mean, I guess spoiler territory, like I said, 12 episodes. Ms. Chalice only shows up at the end. The devil storyline thing, trying to get Cuphead's soul, is really only present in a handful of these episodes, maybe close to half. Let's be generous and say that half of the episodes deal with that continuous storyline in some way. Everything else is just one-off, uninteresting stuff. That last episode ends on a cliffhanger, and you're out. We've been waiting a very long time for this show, and we get, in my opinion, very little. And now, okay, this could be a thing. We've seen this with animated Netflix shows for a while now, where particularly Kid Cosmic and Centaur World had follow-up seasons very quickly. Kid Cosmic wrapped up in just like a year, like a calendar year. It was done, and we got, what, 3 seasons out of it? And Centaur World, it was roughly 6 months before they wrapped it up with season 2. So it is possible that we'll get season 2 of Cuphead much, much sooner than we were expecting initially. And if that's the case, okay, I'm less upset about the cliffhanger ending on a season of nothing. But in this case, just so far, it was a very unsatisfying way to finish a show that didn't feel like it had much substance to begin with, and that's a little confusing to me. The closest thing I can compare it to is Disenchantment, actually. Now, I'm not a big fan of Disenchantment. I've talked about it before. I don't think it's all that great, especially well, I don't know. It's been consistent, I think. They keep trying to tease this continuous storyline in Disenchantment and really big stakes, but it's only a handful of episodes per season, per chapter, or whatever they call it, that actually touch on that in any way and that develop those story moments, and everything else is those one-off episodes. I'm fine with having a mix of continuous storyline and one-off stories, but Disenchantment then ends every single season with like a big cliffhanger, a big teaser, like, oh, don't worry, we actually care about this big plot stuff and we'll come back to it. The first couple of episodes of the next season, we'll develop it a little bit more, and then we're just back to the status quo. It's very frustrating to me, this strange structure. And I almost just feel like, okay, maybe just pick a road. Like, maybe just do this continuous storyline stuff all the time, or maybe just do these goofy one-off episodes with very low stakes. And it's a very similar situation here in the Cuphead Show, I feel. It's just not especially satisfying. I'm not even that excited to see the whole devil thing work out. Like, it's not gonna all end horribly, but then why even, what do I care about the meantime? What do I care about these interstitial little stories? I just don't find it very interesting. I do have a few nitpicks, but in terms of the overall experience of watching the show, I generally found it pretty uninteresting unless I was paying very, very close attention to the animation and basically nothing else. If I was ignoring the voice acting, ignoring the story because I know what's going to happen already, that was all I got out of it, was the animation. Again, I applaud the team. I think they did a pretty excellent job on what's probably not a huge budget, but the end result felt very underwhelming. I mean, compared to my initial expectations for the show, it is much better than I expected, but the end result is not something that I like or that I would recommend. And when it comes down to recommendations, if you're a bit younger and if you're into Cuphead already, just as a property, go ahead, watch the show. Let us know how you feel about it. But me as a grown man, if you're someone else out there who's a full-fledged adult and you want a little bit more out of your entertainment, this is not that. This is not something of substance. This is just a goofy little show that's over before you know it. Who knows when we'll get more? They have to at least do a season 2. It would be very strange to end things right here. In the meantime, I'm not waiting with bated breath. I'm not on the edge of my seat here. I'm just kind of like, okay, that was that. And now that I've made my video, I'm kind of done with it. And I'm just ready for the next thing. That's honestly just how I feel about it. You can just experience it in like a day and just sort of move on with your life. But yeah, I think that's it for me. Thanks for stopping by.